Hi, and welcome to the Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with writer-producer Carol Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding, and host of this show. Carol is the president of From the Heart Productions, a nonprofit organization that has supported filmmakers with the Roy W. Dean Grant, fiscal sponsorship, education, and resources for over 30 years. Carol also teaches the Learn Producing class. Each class features an industry expert guest instructor and is designed to give the information, guidance, and support to become a successful producer. You can learn more about this class and all of From the Heart Productions offerings at FromTheHeartProductions.com.
How do you make an award-winning short film? Well, that's the question we're covering today.
Hello, everyone, and so glad you could join us for this special class and podcast presentation. I'm Claire Papin, co-producer of this series, and I'm delighted to be here with my colleague, Carol Dean, writer, producer, founder of From the Heart Productions, and one of the film industry's most dedicated advocates for independent filmmakers. Today, we're joined by an extraordinary guest whose work has been transforming the way we think about storytelling, representation, and the art of short filmmaking. Rae Shaw is a Black female writer-director whose work expands the boundaries of how Black women see themselves and are seen in the world. Through her films and screenplays, she creates multi-dimensional stories that challenge stereotypes and celebrate authenticity, vulnerability, and imagination. Her award-winning screenplays have earned recognition in prestigious international screenwriting competitions, and her films have screened at major festivals. Rae is also a respected filmmaker, shorts curator, script archivist, and educator. She's received numerous fellowships, including Mellon and ITBS Diversity Development Fund fellowships, and currently teaches in the School of Cinema at San Francisco State University. Today, we'll be discussing her acclaimed book, The Short, published by Michael Wiese Productions. Whether you're an emerging filmmaker, an experienced storyteller, or simply curious about the power of short films, Rae's insights offer practical guidance on writing, developing, producing, funding, and maximizing the impact of short-form storytelling. And Carol, Michael Wiese is your publisher too, right?
Yes, I get to work with Michael Wiese. He has the best books for filmmakers. And welcome, Rae. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Carol and Claire. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's get started. I want to know what inspired you to write The Short and what gap did you see in filmmaking education that needed to be filled?
Well, first I want to say that when I met Michael and connected with him, he was really interested in my short work. He really liked that I'd done experimental films, a trailer, some narrative work. And so I think it really started there. And once I was on board and started writing the book, then I was really interested in how can I how can I write a book for my students? We never have enough time in the classroom. And so I really was thinking about them and how I could create a book that was a lot more accessible and that leveled the playing field for filmmakers, whatever their backgrounds. I really was interested in seeing a short by David Lynch next to a short from someone that everyone doesn't know. There's a really great French film that's about a cockroach. And, those two films um, are in relationship and conversation with each other. But in the industry, we would put someone like David Lynch on a pedestal and not think about, um, this other filmmaker uh, who was uh, uh, able to get some grants from the Doha Institute. And and I think also for the book, I was really interested in creating a space of yeses in an industry of no's.
Wow.
Films are still, yeah, films are still this place where dreams come alive every day. But I remember, with my time in the industry, there's just so many people that are saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. And in my book, I wanted to say, yes, you can, and you will.
Oh, that is so important. Thank you very much because you've got to support other filmmakers. I don't tell filmmakers the hard part because it's a long, hard road to get a film made sometimes. But if you don't know that, then you're more likely to sail through it, have a wonderful time, and be quite successful. That's what they need to hear, the yes. So thank you for that. Now, you describe the short films as their own art form. I love that. Rather than most people think of it as a stepping stone to features. So why do you think that distinction is so important?
I love short films because they're not they're not precious. When you approach a short film, there's just an openness. And I think the most important thing is that there's just less risk. There's more possibility for fun. There's more possibility for play. The approach is totally different. There's less to lose. There's less on the line, you know. And I remember just as an example thinking about Sean Baker when he talked about his transition from making Tangerine to the Florida Project. Tangerine is a feature, but he was making shorts before that. And I like to look at Tangerine as kind of like a long short because of the style and using the phones and giving the phones to the actors. And in some ways I like to think of it as uh, kind of like an anthology of small shorts all brought together to make a feature.
Oh, he's a great filmmaker. That Florida project is so precious. It's the kids. The kids made it so delightful, I think. I really love.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions filmmakers have about making short films?
Yes, that is a favorite question. Uh, the thing that I really try and express in the book that I think is the big secret is that people have made careers of short content. It's kind of a big secret, right? That folks like Spike Lee and Wong Kar-wai are also making commercials. Uh, uh,
Yes.
yeah. And there's also music videos can also be really lucrative, not to mention the social media influencers who are out there. So, it's kind of this quiet secret that a lot of strong, independent filmmakers, they do their industry work in short content and then get to make the films they want to make from those funds. Yeah.
Right. Well, in your book, The Short, you discuss the unique structure of short films. So tell us, how does writing a compelling short differ from writing a feature screenplay?
Yeah, I think there's something really magical about shorts. that I just find so attractive. I love Lynn Ramsey's work in particular. It's so poetic and dreamy, but when I think about her features and her shorts, I feel like, the feature script is it's like a deep dive into an idea, and some of the devices I use with my students is, trying to think of um, the subplots of a feature film as kind of like branches of a tree. Um, but a short script is more like a promise. It's a promise of what's to come. It's a wish, it's a dream, it's an experiment, it's an exploration. And I think short films, they can come from a really personal place. And I think that's really, really powerful. There's no industry influence. There's not like investors involved, all these people that you have to be accountable to. The process of development, can be as unique as the person, whether you go to film school or not. People will use whatever resources they have available to them to start to make it. And I think that's a beautiful process.
Yes, it is. And when it is a personal story, as a grantor, I set up a short film grant. I love it. And I love to see when it's a personal story because first of all, it's going to be excellent and they have their heart in it. They're going to finish it because it's their material they're putting together. Um, so I want you to tell us how people can use your book to their greatest advantage. Start in the beginning and go all the way through it, or can you pick up and look at any chapter as needed?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I do think I've written it in a way that you don't have to go through it chapter by chapter in order. And I do invite people to kind of peruse and look through it, kind of like a script oftentimes, when I used to do coverage back in the day, you're always sort of going to the end of the script and then going to the middle, back to the beginning before you start reading it. So definitely, going to the chapter, the table of contents and looking at the different chapters, I think is great. But I want filmmakers to really use it as a tool to think about how to build a career of storytelling. You know, the book is filled with examples. It really talks about the landscape of short content. It talks about transitions, how you move from one form to another. And more importantly, it really talks about language, the craft of how you're putting the words together to create sounds and imagery. I think more than anything, the book is about form, and how to adapt form for different situations and intentions.
Well, I would say that you're so right. And what I want to congratulate you on is getting that Mellon Fellowship. You have to be a smart cookie to win that. I've Mellon on grants and been up with the board when they're discussing what they want you to achieve. And they're tough. They're tough, but they're really generous with their money when you are talented. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, let's go to chapter 4 because I like that where you get into the theme and the purpose and intention. That's one of my favorite words. What is your intention with this film? So, share some of chapter 4 with us, please.
Yeah, when I was teaching in my earlier years, I remember we did a survey of the students, and it was asking them about, different elements of storytelling, and theme was this thing that we just found over and over again was something that was really hard for students to grasp. It's not a very tangible concept. I think we all are familiar with the universality of themes, love or grief um, or sorrow, but how you make it tangible in a story really becomes the question. And so I really try and express this idea of how theme is something that needs to braid all of the other story elements together. When you're asking about, why people are doing things in the story, it really needs to come back to theme. And I think when I look at purpose and intention, it's really asking questions around the how and what it is you're really trying to do for your audience or cause them to do or inspire them to do. And that really starts to reshape um, how you get to tell that story, in what form, and what impact and effect you want it to have.
What impact? Yes, that's very important. Stay focused on that. And in chapter 5, you want to find meaning in structure. So tell us why this is important.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite chapters in the book. There's an old, very short quote by Sid Field, which basically says, "Screenplays are all about structure."
Yeah.
And I really wanted to explore how I've always felt that writing a screenplay is about having mastery of all the other literary forms. Um, as a chapter in my book, it's interesting because I had some early readers who read it and were expecting a lot of very traditional approaches. And I was like, oh, that's totally not what I want. And so I rewrote the whole chapter, because I really wanted it to be about how structure is also very personal and how we have to allow existing structures that are in the story uh, to allow that story to unfold in that way, and that we shouldn't always be trying to push the form onto it. Sometimes 3-act structure isn't the way. Sometimes 4-act structure isn't the way. Sometimes with a short, you really have to see what the short itself is saying about the structure that it wants to become and to follow that. And that can be uncomfortable. Yeah. But can be very rewarding.
My gosh, that's most unique. Good for you. Okay, let's go to what elements must be present in a successful short film, screenplay, regardless of the genre.
I think that's the unexpected, the unpredictable, the novel. I think short films are about um, doing something that people haven't seen before. I hope my book is reminding those who are reading it that the boundaries can be moved. So let's move them. The part of the title of the book is Writing Tools to Free Your Imagination. And that's, I think that's what people look for in a short. How are you doing something that we haven't seen before? How is it really coming off the page? Um, how is it refreshing and new?
Okay, now let's go to chapter 11, where you cover notes on production, because most short filmmakers have to produce their own films. And you start there with great advice for the producer. You ask them, what are the top goals and intentions for this film?
Yeah, my big question in that chapter is about resources. What are your resources? And that filmmakers really have to think hard about that. I think there's so many ways that we dismiss the resources that are around us. Um, and that you have to kind of look hard at these things that you may be taking for granted. I think being a great producer is akin to thinking of yourself as kind of an anthropologist of sorts, in that you're looking at the time life of your film. You're looking at its present, its past, its future, and you're looking at its relationship to industry, society, and culture. And so, when you're producing that film, it's always going to be uh, go back to this question of what are the resources across this timeline? How will it have a life in the future, um, for the future to come?
Cassavetes was the first one that really did that. He's the father of independent films in my book, because when he did the Chinese bookie film, um, that was a club that one of his students had, who was an actor. So he had an acting group going at the same time. And he
Mhm.
used the acting group actors as a valuable tool. They were in his movies. And then he said, what have we got here? Oh, we have a nightclub. Okay. And he wrote a script around the nightclub and the actor. And that's The Killing of the Chinese Bookie. And it's really a great film. But he was telling all the other independents, use what you have, write a script, see who's got the house on the beach, and use that, write a film about the beach and murder on the beach or something. That's what you're telling your short filmmakers. This is basic, good filmmaking thinking. Now, tell us about your Filmmakers at Play summer workshops.
Yeah, so since the book has come out, we've done a couple of workshops with different nonprofits and libraries and organizations, some collectives, and I've always wanted to be able to offer these workshops, outside of these organizations, to do something online that's really accessible, um, across the country, beyond for sure. So. We're offering a series of workshops, everything from screenwriting to directing to budgeting and producing. And I think we have two workshops, I think, every month in the summer. So, yeah, so two in June, two in July, and two in August. And they're all on Eventbrite, and we also do postings on Instagram and Facebook for folks to join. Yeah, thank you so much for asking about that, Carol.
Well, tell us how people can reach you. What is your email, your Facebook, and tell us all that.
Yeah, Ray at Play at Gmail is an easy way to reach me over email. You'll also find Ray at Play on Instagram, and I think also LinkedIn. Um, let me see, and also on Instagram. My personal handle is also Rae Shaw Filmmaker, so you can find me and any of those workshops on any of those social media platforms. And then in terms of websites, there's theshort.co, and there's also rayatplay.com. And you'll also find information about those workshops there.
Terrific. Okay. Now let's get back into the film world. So, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see filmmakers make during the development and production of their short films?
The number one thing I see is usually shooting before they're ready. And that can look a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's production things, but mostly it's about story. Um, and I think sometimes people are rushing to get the film done, and I understand that pressure. It's always so difficult trying to gather everything together. But, you know, it's about the story at the end of the day, so much about story and the writing, and really having an understanding that it's a literary document, but that it's also a blueprint too, you know, and things like punctuation matter, you know, because performers have to read it and they have to understand. The crew has to understand from what they're reading, what they're trying to create. And I just really love how I'm a someone who's really into genre stuff, especially horror. And I was just at the Bay Area book fair, and they had a Stephen Graham Jones and Tanner Reeve Dew talking about their work. And when someone asked about recommendations, I was so thrilled to just listen to them talking about style books and and poetry, you know, as people who are writing screenplays and fiction.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, what's the possibility of distribution with shorts?
You know, you'll find shorts everywhere. I've always wanted to be invited at some point to do a podcast on how shorts are taking over the world. Because they're everywhere. You know, you'll find shorts on, you know, regular platforms like Netflix and Prime and Apple. You'll find them all over social media, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, you know, but YouTube is just becoming this amazing center, you know, that has the best principles of monetization. You know, if you want to self-distribute, you know, and I think people didn't even realize that Google just kind of quietly over the last year, you know, added a subheading with their searches that's shorts. It's just its own tab now is shorts, you know. So there's YouTube, there's Vimeo. Those are some really common platforms that a lot of independent filmmakers use. And, you know, I think they both have so many tools that are really designed to create sustainability. I think the other thing that people don't really know so much about YouTube and Vimeo is that they're trying to become like these little mini studios where they host other platforms and channels. So like YouTube has Nowness and different channels like that. And then Vimeo has specialized video essay platforms like Film Scalpel and In Transition. So it's a really interesting space that's bigger than I think that we realize. We just kind of take them for granted.
Oh, listen, Disney doesn't. I mean, YouTube is outpacing Disney. They're getting more traffic. Could you ever imagine that? I mean,
Yep.
smart cookies.
Yes.
So, okay, let's talk about funding because that sometimes could be a challenge. I see as a sponsor for filmmakers making shorts, the money is coming from their brother, sister, uncle, aunt, best pals, and what is so wonderful is it comes in $100 checks or $5,000 check. But it's all heartfelt. You see that because when they write the checks out and then they put, this is for my friend's short film, so and so. And uh, there's a love there. There's a support as effort.
There is, yeah.
How did you fund your films, Ray?
You know, I have a section in the book that's called Making It Work, which draws from what you were just talking about in terms of sponsorships, in-kind donations, all of those things, you know, grandmom's cooking, all of those things. So yeah, so I agree with all of that. I have also, yes, been able to draw from some of those resources in the past. So, you know, sponsorships, in-kind donations, crowdfunding. I think as a professor, I have also benefited from just becoming a really strong grant writer. I've been writing grants, gosh, I think ever since I really just graduated film school, and academia has really just helped me to write better, and more connective and cohesive grants. So, I think filmmakers have to take all of that into account and really just think about, again, what resources do I have that I'm sort of taking for granted that can help me to make my film? I think the one great thing that has happened that is a huge change is the accessibility to a camera. Now with camera phones, that is not so much a problem anymore. And, it really puts um, the possibility and the accessibility of making a film in so many people's hands now.
Absolutely, because so many people are watching films on their on their phones that it doesn't matter that you don't have the top camera.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so now you talked about the grandmother cooking for you. See, this is what I find that filmmakers forget. They need more than money. They need people who have no money but lots of time to help them with research, with marketing, posting online, finding somebody to do all the posting on a social network for you, and then giving them a social networking credit in the film is very effective. And finding somebody who's a good cook who will cook the lunches or the breakfast, these are all fun things, right? And
Yeah.
save you money.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about nonprofit organizations helping filmmakers move from a short film idea to a completed project and giving the donor the write-off. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think that nonprofit organizations can help short filmmakers in many ways. Whether it's someone who's a sponsor or offering funds through their company or their individual sponsorships. I think those are absolutely on board and um, can really help in the making of a project. I think I think one of the best things that organizations can do to help filmmakers, however, the one thing I think can make a real difference is allowing filmmakers to make the choice of whether the film is going to be a short or a feature. I think so many times I see a lot of organizations when they're offering funds or sponsorships, they really try and ask filmmakers to qualify whether it's a feature or a short. And I think those lines are getting more blurred through digital media. So I think being able to leave that door open more times, I think can be really helpful to filmmakers.
I totally agree with you. And a short is anything under 40 minutes, right? That's how you classify it.
Yes, yes.
And 40 minutes to me is a perfect length for a film where you have a community-based feedback group where you go in with the questions, you hand everybody outlines and their discussions, and it could be on overcoming grief, or so many people are working on things about grief or how do you achieve success after some disaster in your life. And all of these things seem to be important to filmmakers. So a 40-minute film or a 30-minute film is not only more saleable, but it is a perfect length for a community discussion. Have you?
Mhm. Oh, can you say that one more time, Carol? Sorry.
Yes. Are you finding that films that are 30 or 40 minutes are great to use for community discussion groups? In other words, let's say the film is about loss or overcoming grief, and you're working with people who have experienced that or are dealing with it, and you can use your short film along with uh, a feedback group that talks after the film about how to use the film content to better their lives.
Yeah, I think that um, shorts that are made for the community and align with some of the principles or the missions um, of those nonprofit organizations. I think that's happening a lot more now. I think it's happened in the past too, but I definitely feel like we're seeing that occur more. And I think for the longer short films, I absolutely agree with you that it's a much better space um, for there to be a discussion, for there to be education, for there to be illumination, and really just exploring a lot of the ideas. You know, longer shorts are harder to get into film festivals because it means that you're giving up the number of shorts for this one big short. But these kinds of in-person or online discussions are perfect for that kind of situation and scenario where the nonprofit can really talk about the issue in a way um, where the community can participate and really engage with the ideas and the concepts in the short film to really create movements and generate support in really powerful ways.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Now you have extensive experience as a curator and an archivist. So, what trends are you seeing in short filmmaking that excite you?
Well, I know we were talking about verticals.
Yes, yes. It's
Yes, that
money is
verticals go,
favorite.
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Money. I talked to a woman who is an expert. She's making a lot of verticals. And she said 50 million views is a bad film. You have done a poor job.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But
Yes.
so for filmmakers from underrepresented communities, how can short films become powerful tools for telling stories?
Yeah, I think that filmmakers of color, filmmakers from diverse backgrounds, I think they're coming to a phase where we are no longer asking for permission, um, and are really just taking the tools and making films with whatever resources that we have. I mean, I think the time that we're in now, we're seeing so many people who have done that in the past and are doing it more in the future. Definitely thinking about the Issa Raes and the Quinta Brunsons and, what they were able to do with short content on social media and YouTube, but also filmmakers like Jen Nukuru and Nuatama Bodomo, Cecilia Mike, who are also doing things for museums and, have their work on YouTube on some of these specialized channels. The short is really just a space where I see so many filmmakers just really telling their stories, their political stories, their passion stories, the things that are important to them, the things that are happening in the world right now. Um, yeah.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So the last question, if a filmmaker listening today could take away just one lesson from the short, what would you want that to be?
I think the thing that I was always told when I was starting out in the filmmaker, um, that rule has not changed. And that rule is make the film that no one else can make. That I think is still where we are. And so I encourage everyone who's thinking about making a film or hasn't made one in a while, I tell my students, just keep making. Just keep making the films. You will learn so much. You will always get better. And to remember that it's really all about the process. Enjoy it, have fun, explore, experiment, and you'll find your way. You'll find your visual language. You'll find your style. And I think that's what we're seeing today, is that so many filmmakers, with the back rooms and obsession, we're really finding out that filmmakers who keep making, they're able to find their way into a career.
Into their career. Absolutely. Rae, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your passion for short filmmaking. Your book, The Short, reminds us that short films are not merely smaller versions of feature films. They are powerful storytelling vehicles, and they're capable of creating profound emotional impact, launching careers, and giving voice to stories that deserve to be told. So we encourage our listeners to pick up a copy of The Short and continue exploring the creative possibilities of short form storytelling. This book is available on Amazon. So join us again next week for another inspiring conversation with filmmakers and industry professionals who are helping shape the future of storytelling. So thank you for being with us, Rae and Claire. And thank you for the knowledge that you shared with us. We really appreciate your total dedication to filmmakers, Rae.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Now, in its second edition, Carol Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carol Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Rakelin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidrakelin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carol and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.